Hey, it's AJZulu here, and welcome to this short leak analysis video of the recent StarGuardians short cinematic. Uh, Obviously, if you're seeing this, then maybe you most likely have seen TV Science video, and here I'll be trying to talk about new things that might not have been said, and also take a focus on the game mechanic aspect of the cinematic and how Riot tries to sort of connect their gameplay to the actual cinematic. A small reference to Dota 2 that does this extremely well and focus on this aspect much more, where their cinematic and all of the heroes that they have would be using skills that are actually featured in the game. Sometimes in Riot's case and their cinematic, they would extend the champion's abilities outside of the mechanics within the game and explore a more fantasy-like and imaginative aspect of the character, which is a different way of approaching the genre, but in this case, they did a pretty good job with Rakan, Xayah, and Nico, though Zoe is by far the weakest aspect, and this also has to do with the fact that she is the villain, StarGuardian, that has this corruption ability within the lore. And if we watch like Zoe and know Zoe's gameplay, she's totally not the type to corrupt or like damage the enemy in that aspect. And I'll be getting to Zoe near the very end. But so far, let's go back to the very beginning and just talk about Rakan, Xayah, and also Nico. So here we have like just the start of the fight, where Xayah, first off, I think in this case is throwing around her Q and just regular attacks overall. Just now we saw like 2 volleys of attacks at the same time. Let's try to go back again. So here we have 1, 2, and 3. So that would be her Q, throwing out her Q very quickly. A few more there, obviously with no cooldown. Then here we have her E, pulling all of her feathers back to her, and within the game it would root people if they get hit by multiple feathers. This is something not in the game, but I don't exactly am sure about Nico's abilities, but this is obviously her W, but I wouldn't exactly say that when Nico uses her W and goes invisible for a while, she actually becomes transparent and no longer will take any hits. So the aspect of her not taking hits is an adjustment to her abilities for the cinematic that I'll say is outside of the actual game mechanic. So yeah, she goes invisible, but she doesn't really become untargetable. So this is her W ending once again from invisibility, and she appears again and throws out her E to Xayah, and then Rakan blocks it. Even though he blocks it with a shield, technically they both would be rooted within the game mechanic, but in this case, for the cinematic itself, Rakan's shield blocks the spell, and so they are not affected. Here Xayah uses her W, in which case I'm not sure if there's a relationship with Rakan's animation, because if Xayah uses some of her spells like W especially, Rakan will also get a buff, but it's a little bit hard to tell if this animation of Rakan is sort of showing that he's also being affected by Xayah's W. So Xayah's like gets more attack speed. We all know this is Rakan's ultimate, and just now, which was a little bit fast, is Rakan's knock up. So he goes in, and let us slow this down, and then I'll put this outside of the window. And then that's sort of the knock-up, and we see his pose right here of where the knock-up is, and sends Nico flying in the air. But Nico is under control, and she then transforms into Zaya. This is again a little bit adjustment from Nico's usual mechanics within the game. Nico within the game couldn't transform into the enemy. She can only transform into her own allies. We could say that Zaya and Rakan used to be her allies before they got corrupted and were in her team, or StarGuardian team. So with that context, it kind of makes sense why Nico could transform into her quote-unquote allies who now turned into enemies. So in that case, that kind of makes sense. But if they were purely enemies, or let's say it was Zoe, Nico shouldn't be able to transform into or mimic Zoe. So Zai got hit by Rakan's Q, and then he then heals his supposed Nico that he thought was the correct person. Technically, they used to be allies, so I guess that's how Rakan could heal the enemy. But we know if they're actually enemies, the heal wouldn't really work. Nico turns back and starts to run away. This is actually a great moment in the cinematic, because their back animation within the game actually shows a lot of story on Rakan's sacrifice for his lover Zaya, and Zaya being the one who, based on the written lore as well, but the animation also presents a lot of story within them, that Zaya is a little bit pleased with her corruption and accept the evil side much more than Rakan, while Rakan doesn't really accept the evil part, but only accepts it because he wants to be with Zaya. So now they're back here, up here again, and I'll just presume that it's all part of Zoe's sort of intricate maze-like world. And then she opens another portal. Obviously, Zoe cannot open portals for people to go through. That would be Rise's ability, which is shown in a previous cinematic. And now we have Nico here charging up her ultimate. And then we have Zoe using her Q for the first time. Though if one were to play Zoe within the game, we would prefer to sort of throw the Q backwards and then fling it into the enemy for the longest distance. But let's just say this is like trying to throw it as quickly as possible, and now Zaya is throwing out her ultimate. Then very cool, Nico jumps up and then smashes down. Zoe uses her ulti and then tries to get away. Rakan comes in to shield her, and the damage is too much. Another thing that I like is how Zaya, who's like in the beginning of the animation, was like so focused on like capturing. Where is it? Right around here. Zaya was so focused on sort of capturing Nico that she doesn't really care about Rakan, who's sort of in her way. And then we have another one right around here, where even after Zaya being healed by Rakan, Zaya still sort of goes after Nico and focus on her enemy. But in this sort of section, now the third time, Zaya then goes after Rakan, which looks very nice. So he throws out another Q. Here is Nico's Q for the first time, throwing out that frog. Let's go back right there. It still looks like a frog. That's so amazing. Zoe dodges with her Q again, and this is where it shows Zoe's Q, the second Q actually, to be able to move the Q. So let's just go back to check once more. So Zoe throws out the Q and it missed, right? But just because it missed, now Zoe uses the Q again to redirect the missed Q to hit Nico, and then but then it turns out to be an illusion all along, Nico's W, and it just fades away, and then Zoe gets hit by Nico's E, but what turns out to be Zoe's W. And this is something that I think there was a little bit of lost potential, because within the actual game it kind of looks much cooler than this, because there are hands coming out of here as if it's again corrupting the person. But instead we have another great animation here, as if it's inside Nico's dream. But I certainly would wish that there was some hands sort of coming up to sort of grab Nico as part of Zoe's corruption, and we will get into that a little bit later on after this amazing section once again. And this, let's say, would be like the dream sequence when Nico like falls asleep by Zoe's E. And another thing that's sort of missing from Zoe that again I wanted to talk about since the beginning was that her W wasn't really featured, and I think it's like a small missed opportunity, since Zoe's the type of person to sort of steal summoners, steal within the game. Actually, it's just items, but I think it's a nice leeway for the cinematic itself, since there's no items within like the actual lore, and supposedly there are no summoner spells for Zoe to steal. So for Zoe within the lore and cinematic to actually steal Nico's abilities would be, I think, a fine replacement to Zoe's W. And here we have another one of Zoe sort of trying to corrupt. Almost looks like she's sprinkling some glitter, but this glitter is like toxic radiation and it's just consuming Nico. And again, this is like another sort of alternative again, because on the one hand it could be Zoe throwing out another bubble to try to corrupt Nico, or alternatively again, a second one would be to use Zoe's W, and she would have like small bubbles, and then each small bubble would like go to Nico, corrupting her more and more, you know, just to have the W represented. And then with these scenes again, if let's go back to her E ability, there would be like the bubble E down here, and then small hands, so it would just be twirling or swirling around Nico, trying to consume her more and more, and that might be a much scarier look, as the corruption is trying to consume Nico, and might look much scarier as well. And now we come to the end of the video. Ari jumps in to save the day, superhero style. Something that TV Skyen said about Ari's walk-in, he talked about how it looked unnatural. My sort of personal feedback and opinion to this is that her left arm here, if you look, her legs look kind of fine to me, you know, that confident superhero walk-in, but then this hand looks a little bit stiff, like that that movement just now of just moving right in front, very straight, you know. Usually like people with strength even their arms would still be sort of bent a little bit as if they're ready to take action. But this sort of straight hand look of just swinging it in just looks like those Victoria's Secret, those highway runaway model people. So that's what Ari kind of looks. She's just like walking into those runaway model red carpet, or like doing those fashion show line kind of walk through, and then she's like standing in the end of the line showing off the fashion, and she's about to like do a turnaround and walk out. So that's sort of like how I see it personally. But yeah, that is the end of the video, talking through the different skills, how they are shown and used within this cinematic, and how it relates to the actual mechanics of the game. And as I said before, a little bit sad that Zoe did not get to show off her abilities as much as I think she should. Her W wasn't featured at all, unfortunately, and because of the lore of Zoe being the evil StarGuardian doesn't fit the default Zoe spells too much. But as I said throughout the video, at the end, I think there are ways to adapt her W to be like her corruption spell, or like the sleep spell that has the hands coming up. Looks super cool in game, but they did not use it within this cinematic, which I think is a small missed opportunity. And that is all for today's video. If there's something that I missed or made a mistake, be sure to comment down below, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye for now.